Welcome to BizTech's SME Show, where we feature SMEs both small and large, sharing their entrepreneurial journeys and also imparting the lessons that they've learned. Now, today's featured company is car subscription company Flux. And with us is Aziz Ayman, the founder and CEO of Flux. Aziz, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Now, Aziz, give us an overview of Flux and give us a quick recap of your journey so far.
Sure. So Flux is an all-inclusive monthly car subscription service. What that means is for one simple price, you're able to subscribe to a vehicle where insurance, road tax, maintenance all bundled into that one price. But the beauty about a subscription service, very much like Netflix and Spotify, you have the ability to be able to swap cars as your needs change. So let's say, an example, if you are a young professional starting off your career, you can start off with, let's say, a Kia Picanto or let's say a Proton Saga. But as you move up the career, as you start your family, maybe you want something a little bit bigger. You don't have to go through that pain of refinancing your hire purchase loan. You can easily swap cars as your needs change. In addition to that, we have a concierge service. We notice that a lot of Malaysians don't want to deal with the mundane administrative matters when it comes to upkeeping their vehicles. So what we do is be able to do a door-to-door service, taking your cars to the service center, dealing with the mechanics, so you don't have that risk of overpaying for maintenance and servicing fees. And so altogether, this is a service that's really predicated on convenience and flexibility, something that changes the equation that people typically get locked into when it comes to getting a car via bank, via a loan. So this service was really inspired by the time when I moved back just from the US. I was in a mobility company in Silicon Valley.
Oh, which one?
I was in Turo, actually.
Oh, okay, Turo. That's one of the market leaders.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And so when I came back, I really wanted to think about how do Malaysians typically, access mobility? And again, I go back to the fact that banks have a monopoly when it comes to, Malaysians having access to a car 24/7 in their home, in their driveway. And so I said, loans, obviously, you're locked into a long-term financial arrangement, 5 to 9 years. It's very fixed. One, you have to pay a huge down payment up front, which obviously isn't ideal when it comes to cars because cars are a depreciating asset. So straight off the bat, when you drive it off the lot, you're losing anywhere between 10 to 15% in terms of value. And then, as I mentioned, most Malaysians don't have the automotive technical aspects when it comes to managing their car. And so for us, really, we designed this service to be able to cater to address these needs, to shift this paradigm, to be able to make it a lot more flexible, a lot more convenient, and again, from a financial standpoint, a lot lower cost upfront, which again can be quite a huge burden for a lot of households. And so, this is inspired by the fact of, a lot of services like, entertainment with Netflix, with music, with Spotify, really introducing this new form to be able to allow consumers to have greater choice at a lower cost.
Now, the value proposition for consumers is very clear, but so how do you source your cars? Do you own your fleet or do you partner with car retailers, dealers, and so forth?
Yeah, no, great question. So we're a double-sided marketplace, very similar to Airbnb. Obviously we are the intermediary servicing our customers, our members, but on the supply side, we really source them, quite rightly so, from the automotive retailers and as well as automotive distributors themselves. So for them, we're trying to solve the problem of holding on to inventory as an automotive retailer is very expensive. And again, it's very hard for them because they're manufacturing all these cars. If they're sitting on their lot, they're incurring depreciating costs, they're incurring interest costs. And it's, again, for them, it's always about moving the cars as quickly as possible. Right now, they only have one methodology to be able to monetize these assets: sales, sales, sales. Offering them a subscription-based format allows them to monetize the cars in a different way, building a longer term relationship with the consumer and having higher or more frequent interactions with them. Typically, when you're selling a car, you'll sell a car and you won't see the customer for 5 to 9 years. But with a subscription, they have the ability to swap the car, return the car back, get that feedback with regards to the customer. And so it gives them more sort of business intelligence on who their customers are, how do they go about, making those shopping preferences. And again, these are all insights that help drive them in terms of their key product decisions that they make. And so for us, we've established partnerships with, organizations like UMW Toyota, with NASA themselves and their automotive marquees that they have under their automotive brand unit, as well as with organizations such as, sorry, it's just blanking me for 1 second. Well, we also work with used car dealers as well. So we run through the entire gamut of the entire spectrum, authorized, offering cars like Proton, offering them like Kia, all the way up to Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. So for us, really, we try to offer as much as a wide variety and to introduce this new concept of selling or monetizing vehicles from the automotive industry.
Now, it's interesting because you brought up a couple of key questions in terms of the customer journey and customer interaction.
Yeah.
How do you segregate between your touch points with the customer and their touch points with the customer?
Yeah, no, for us, we are an exclusively online platform, which I would say, given the context of us going through a pandemic and a lockdown, has been extremely fortuitous. So for us, our interactions are completely online, trying to make it as seamless and frictionless as possible, whereas majority of the automotive retailers here in Malaysia still rely on the brick and mortar experience where consumers have to go to the dealerships, interact with, the salespersons to be able to, find out what are their needs, what are their preferences, can they do a test drive, and so on and so forth. For us, we're trying to bring that experience online. So I think it's a perfect symbiotic relationship whereby, for our consumers, when, let's say, they don't have the ability to be able to visit the showroom, when they don't have the convenience, maybe they can only do their car shopping late at night at home on the sofa, on the couch. And so our digital experience helps complement the brands who have those brick and mortar retail outlets for consumers to be able to go to.
Okay, now there's a lot of competition in this space and there are different business models. So you have the likes of SoCar, which owns its own fleet.
Yep.
And then there's SoCar, GoCar. There are also partners that, like Trivial, who actually use fleets either from car dealers or basically even from individuals who want to monetize that extra car that's sitting on their driveway.
Yep.
So who do you consider your key competitors and what makes you different from the competition?
Gotcha. So you're quite right. The space now that it's sort of like, proven its product market fit within the Malaysian context, you're starting to see, big automotive players, Renault, Nissan, Toyota themselves, all of these big automotive players introducing their own version of a car subscription service, which again, I think only reinforces the fact that this is not a flash in the pan. This is not a gimmick, but really it's a different form of car ownership, which again, the various automotive players really understand that, hey, consumer preferences, consumer behavior is shifting. Car ownership and long-term, relationships via a high purchase loan is no longer attractive. And so each car subscription service is not made equal, to be honest.
Yeah.
You have ones which are, again, locked into a specific format or a specific, like more similar to a lease, which is again a little bit more rigid relative to a car subscription. But for us, the way that we view it is, three key differentiation factors. One, we're brand agnostic. When you come to us, you can find a plethora of makes and models and variants, and plus we offer both new as well as used cars. Some of these other players really only offer brand new cars only, and they're only locked into that one particular brand itself. You can't switch between a Proton and a Mercedes-Benz, which you can do with Flux. Two, as I mentioned to you, we really pride ourselves on the fact that we're technology-based. You don't have to go sign multiple documents, look at have to read all the fine print. Everything is an online experience. It's seamless, it's easy. You can reserve a car in less than 5 minutes. And again, all the documentation is all online. We plan, our SLA is to be able to deliver a car to you from 7 days from your reservation itself. So again, a lot quicker than traditionally buying a car. And lastly, it's all about service. For us, it's a long-term relationship, and we know every time when each customer, when it comes to owning a car, yes, of course, you remember the memorable moments of, driving the car and enjoying it. But the ones that really stick to you are the ones where you're having the biggest pain points. When your car breaks down, when you can't use your car, when you're stuck on the middle of a highway and you have no access to be able to get your car towed away. So for us, we really designed our service to be able to help each of our members during those trying and difficult times. When you lose your car, we actually install a telematics device within our vehicle to be able to help with, as soon as you get into an accident, we will know when the accident happens because there's an accelerometer. I can see that acceleration, your speed has gone from, let's say, 70 kilometers an hour to 0 in less than a couple of seconds. So then we will give you a call straight away and say, oh, we've noticed that you're in an accident. Are you okay? Can we send someone to you? Do you need some medical assistance? And if you don't pick up, we'll send it to your last known location. So again, we're looking at ways of how we can leverage technology to be able to enhance the customer experience, because that's important for our users.
Okay, and that's interesting because I'm going to ask you the next question that follows on from that, which is basically, obviously with that, if you've got a telematics device in there, your corporate customers, and you've got both private and corporate customers, your corporate customers would be very interested in that data in terms of fleet utilization, fleet management, and so forth. Walk us through what you actually provide your corporate customers, for example, versus your private customers.
Yeah, no, definitely. With regards to our corporate customers, it really boils down to, utilization of the vehicle, how these cars are being used, and what are the running costs for those vehicles. Because you obviously want to be able to streamline, you obviously want to be able to minimize those costs. And when it comes from a health and safety perspective, you obviously want your drivers to be able to be good, I would say, actors on our Malaysian roads. Limits the risk of damage to the vehicle, damage to the goods and services that are being carried on the vehicles, as well as the well-being of your employees. And so for us, one, we can even track driving behavior. So here we have an algorithm to be able to assess how fast someone accelerates, what's the G-forces they're able to take into the corner. And so all these raw data points are synthesized into a score to be able to give whether or not this particular driver or this particular vehicle is being driven at a high risk level. And again, this can be all predicted in terms of probability. What is the probability of this particular driver getting to an accident? And so when you can quantify that, you can start to be able to introduce certain measures to be able to reduce that risk. And so that's what we actually share with our corporate clients to be able to help them manage those risks.
And so, Aziz, what's the split like between private and corporate customers?
Gotcha. So we've actually just recently launched our B2B service at the end of last year. And right now it's roughly around about an 80% B2C, because we launched at the end of 2019, our B2C product. So it's still in its infancy, but it's our fastest growing service. The interest is extremely high with regards to our B2B product. And it's predominantly because, one, you mentioned quite rightly, with a service like ours, you're able to have this additional data to be able to enhance and to be able to manage the risks relating to the logistics and maintenance of your cars. But two, it's also from a cash flow perspective. When it comes to buying cars, you're incurring depreciation upfront on your balance sheet, which you will no longer have to do with regards to when you subscribe to a service like Flux. But two, you no longer have to pay a down payment upfront. You no longer have to pay 10 to 15% of the value of the vehicle upfront. Here, the upfront costs are extremely low. And so given the economic cycle that we are in right now with the pandemic, it's extremely cost effective from a cash flow perspective.
And it's also tax deductible.
Yes, we are an LHD and approved tax deductible expense. And so businesses are able to expense our fees when it comes to the tax savings.
Now, Aziz, I want to take this discussion a bit broader, and really the broader question of mobility.
Yeah.
Now, so as you correctly pointed out, car manufacturers are looking at mobility really from a holistic perspective. For an individual, mobility can be in the form of either ride hailing, car sharing, car rental, and car subscription. What are your predictions in terms of the car subscription industry, given all this plethora of choices?
I mean, first of all, I think that it's great, and I think it'll only, I would say, intensify in terms of the innovation that happens within the space. You know, when you think about it, 3 years ago, we really didn't have a very strong, I would say, presence when it comes to, let's say, car sharing in general.
Yes.
We had maybe ride hailing, you know, the advent of Uber that entered the market. Obviously, Mike Taxi pivoted to become Grab. When it comes to the longer term relationship, when it comes to car subscriptions, you will start to find how companies can start to introduce technology to be able to enhance the experience and to create further value for the consumer. So one thing that I think is going to be very interesting is the insurance space. Car insurance really hasn't been innovated here within Malaysia, but in the US, you are able to have pay per mile type of insurance. So you only pay for the insurance dependent on the number of kilometers that you drive,
Yes.
right? And so here in Malaysia, we can't do that. There's no system or processes to be able to do that. But with services like Flux, with technology companies coming into the space where you can monitor and track these things, I think it'll become a lot more sophisticated, whereby you're no longer using, you know, basic heuristics of, okay, how old are you? Which part of the country do you live in, to be able to determine what's your risk profile. And when it comes to driving a motor vehicle, here you'll be able to use data to be able to influence, okay, because you are someone who is a very good driver, you don't speed, you always abide by the, you know, the speed limit, you don't drive that much, and so therefore your risk into getting into an accident is relatively low. Therefore, you are able to, you know, get a lower premium. So again, this value is returned back to the consumer itself, as opposed to, you know, always just overpaying for your premiums. So
Aziz, so this is where I have to defend the insurance industry in Malaysia, because de-tariffication of motor insurance has taken place already a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think that some insurers are already looking at telematics and will be able to, and that's where companies like you could come in. If you're able to provide them with the telematics, the data collection that you are collecting basically, you will be able to then negotiate lower rates. And as an individual, if I rent from you and then I request for my utilization data, I can go back and ask for my other cars a reduction in insurance for some of the, I don't want to give free publicity, but some of the insurers, I think, will be more receptive than others, especially some of the foreign insurers.
Yep. No, most definitely, it's already started, I would say, during this this past couple of years, and we're really leveraging upon like smartphones. But with services like us, you can really, you know, ground the risk of like, okay, how is this particular vehicle? Because you're insuring the vehicle, you know, predominantly, right? So, you know, again, it's going to be very, very exciting with regards to this. And I think that I would say the next step when it comes to, you know, the automotive, you know, car buying process is really everything will start to shift to be moving online. Right now, the average consumer really spends, I would say, 60 to 70% of their car shopping well before they even enter a showroom. You know,
Yes.
They're looking at online reviews, they're crowdsourcing reviews and insights from owners on Facebook groups and so on and so forth. So really the last step of the mile is really entering that showroom. Right now, we don't have a very strong, I would say, digital experience. I think that's something that's going to be really, really big moving forward when it comes to car buying and car subscribing, to be honest.
Now, Aziz, so where are you at now in terms of your business? You've been around for since, I think, late 2018, 2019, am I correct?
2019, yes, so we've been around for a year and a half.
Yeah. So what sort of fleet size do you have right now in terms of subscribers?
So with us, I mean, obviously, when we first launched, I think the buzz was fantastic and the uptake rate was extremely well. As soon as the lockdown happened in early 2020, you know, when people don't need to drive,
They return their cars. Yep.
Surprisingly, actually, majority of our subscribers actually kept on to their cars because they still needed it for like, you know, simple sort of shopping runs. But the beauty about the subscription format in that context, you were able to downgrade. So for
Okay.
example, if you were taking a BMW 3 Series, maybe your finances were impacted, you can actually swap down to, let's say, that Proton X70,
Okay.
let's say, for example, managing your costs. And so it was, again, I would say most of our subscribers, if not all, stayed with us during that period. But as soon as the lockdown and the economy opened up, things have rebounded again. So on average, when you look at from day one to now, we get a subscription one every 2 days.
Okay. And so for the consumer who has to pay, say compared to a normal loan, the consumer has to pay a significant premium for that. How does the consumer kind of get around that? So for example, I saw on your website that a Proton X50 goes for about $2,000 a month. That's quite a hefty amount for a $100,000 car. How do you get a take-up rate and how do you convince them? Is that for a very short period of commitment and that's why the amount is so high?
So I think the reason why people opt to choose our service than compared to going down the traditional route is really from a cash flow perspective. They don't have to pay the huge upfront fees.
Okay.
That's the reason why they choose. So when you're looking at, like, if I have to fork out, let's say 15,000 upfront, what could I do with that money alternatively? I mean, if I'm an SME owner, I could be investing this money into my business as opposed to, having it tied up within this asset per se, In addition to that, they don't want to basically manage, for them, it's an extreme pain to be able to manage the car. And so here they love the idea of outsourcing it to us.
And so what's the minimum tenure for your subscriptions?
It's all the way from 1 month up to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So here you have the ability as well, that let's say, for example, if you want to cancel your subscription early, you have the ability to do so, and it's a lot less painful than going down the traditional route. So we've had a couple of expats, obviously they may have left, Malaysia. And so for them, they don't have to worry about, oh, I have to sell this car and I have to be able to sell it to a used car dealer and basically take a huge loss in the car. Basically looking is like, okay, fine. I committed initially to 2 years, but essentially of me using it for 2 years, I'm only going to use it for 1 year. With Flux, you only have to pay the rate that you would have paid for. If so, let's say, for example, 2 years, obviously rate is a lot cheaper relative to our 1 year rate.
Right.
You can essentially just swap or cancel, and essentially you're only paying for 1 year's use of that vehicle.
Okay. Okay. And now you've got some traction. You been running for 1.5 years. What's the strategy moving forward for you?
Yes. So for us, it's all about expanding and growing our accessibility to our service. So we really want to be able to broaden. We noticed that, given the current economic situation, we initially had cars that were targeted to more of the mass premium segment. Now we're introducing more local brands to be able to access, people further down, I would say, the value chain. So a lot more Myvis, a lot more Sagas, a lot more Bezas. Coupled with that, we've also reduced our age requirement. Obviously, because there's a very high, I would say, correlation when it comes to risk and your age, as a lot of insurers know. So for us, it was a little bit risky, giving this big, expensive assets to young individuals because, when they return the asset, the residual value could be completely demolished just due to the usage. And so for us, now that we have a very good understanding of the market, how they behave, having those interventions to be able to influence people's driving behavior, we are essentially now opening up to a lot younger audiences to be able to, subscribe to our vehicles. So people who are still within university at the age of 21 can subscribe to a car via Flux. So again, opening ourselves up to a younger audience. But in addition to that, we're also looking to be able to add more premium cars to our profile. So here, Maseratis, Cayennes, we've actually had quite a lot of requests for ultra luxury premium cars like the Aston Martin DBX, like the Rolls-Royce Phantom. So these again are cars that are now being added to our inventory, and again adding our scope for who we are servicing and the type of consumers that we provide our services to. In addition to that, right now we're only based within the Klang Valley area, with our concierge service, which is again a very high touch experience. We want to be able to deliver this for other geographic markets within Malaysia. When we first launched, we had a lot of requests coming from all the way from like Bintulu, from Malacca, from Johor Bahru, all the way up to Perlis. And again, unfortunately, we had to turn away those customers because we didn't have the operational presence within those cities. And so for us, our next steps will be to grow into those various geographic markets and essentially enter our first international market by the end of this year.
And which is the first international market that you're targeting?
We will share that with you shortly, in the future when the time is right, to be honest. I mean, right now, when you look at it, car subscriptions really hasn't penetrated markets like Thailand, Indonesia. It's still in its infancy. Only Singapore has, some players introducing the car subscription service. Yeah. But other regional countries around here, again, I think Malaysia is still at the forefront when it comes to car subscriptions. So there's a really attractive opportunity in some of these other international markets.
Aziz, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, I'm Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Flux founder and CEO Aziz Ayman on BizTech's SME Show. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe and like our various platforms. Thank you very much for watching.